Hey everyone, I'm Hash. Most of you probably don't know who I am. Some of you may know me from my guitar tutorials, and some of you may know me from my guitar videos, but for the most part, I'm just another minority kid who picked up his favorite band's book at age 14 and found out that they had a song with the N-word in it. And when I continued to read, I found out that the same song ridiculed immigrants and homosexuals. Now, I can't tell you how heartbroken I felt when I read that. I remember feeling very anxious, and I probably didn't even know what anxiety or being anxious meant back then. I remember feeling really hot, my body sort of heated up, because I realized that all these guys whose pictures that I have on my wall would probably not want to be my friend or hang out with me if they ever met me in real life. See, at that age, when you're 14, all you really think about is hanging out with your favorite band and telling the kids at school. So that band happens to be Guns N' Roses, and that song happens to be One in a Million, and I'll talk more about that later in this video. But all the recent unrest that has been going on due to riots, and specifically due to cops killing African Americans in the United States, a lot of thoughts and feelings about racism have come back again. This reminded me of some of the racism and the prejudice that I've seen within rock and metal music. I think I was maybe too ashamed or embarrassed to talk about these things because I felt like, hey, I don't want to be part of the group that my idols were sort of dissing. But I think it's important to talk about how some of our favorite bands have deeply hurt some of their fans, like myself, because they probably didn't realize how far their reach was going to be when they broke out and when they became very successful. A big part of the racism in rock and metal is due to how culture has changed in the United States. Now, when I first moved to the States in the early 2000s, people used to make fun of me all the time. They used to make fun of me for a lot of things, but one of them was for the music that I listened to. I listened to a lot of 80s metal and hard rock, and the people who I would meet would say stuff like, why are you listening to that old 80s white people music that they listen to in Oklahoma and stuff like that? Now, I always thought this was a really silly comment that people would make, but looking back at that now, I think I understand what they were trying to say better. Because in the United States, music becomes very commercial, it's targeted towards a certain audience, and then the fad changes. Music comes and goes in fads here in the States, especially when record labels used to exist. You would have these marketing machines that would pump out these formulas of bands in the 80s for a short time. Those were metal bands. They would make them very successful, and then they would move to the next thing. Now, what's interesting about US culture is different music is targeted towards different people. Now, in the 80s, a lot of the rock and metal was targeted towards Caucasian people. And I think that a lot of bands from the 80s that became worldwide superstars, or some of them who didn't become superstars but have to tour Asian countries today, maybe didn't quite understand how far their reach would be. Now, here's a picture from the 90s, and this picture wasn't a big deal when it came out, but if this came out today, this would probably offend a lot of people. It's the guys in Metallica, Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield, doing a Nazi salute. Maybe in their mind they thought that this was funny and they were fooling around. However, today this would be insensitive. Culture is a big part of how racism and prejudice has evolved in the United States. Now, being politically correct in the 90s was probably very different than what it is today. Probably worse in the 80s, probably worse in the 70s. And here's another interesting picture from a few years earlier than the Metallica picture. And in this picture, you see members from Slayer, Exodus, and Machine Head. Rob Flynn from Machine Head. Now, what's interesting about him being in this picture is recently, about 5 years ago or so, Phil Anselmo did a Nazi salute at Dime Bash, Phil Anselmo being the ex-singer of Pantera, and then he tried to explain that he was just joking about white wine. However, Rob Flynn from Machine Head said, no, you weren't, and made a video calling him out on this. So maybe in the 90s, Rob Flynn didn't have an issue with people doing a Nazi salute in a picture with him, but obviously today he seems to have a big issue with it. So that just is another example of culture just may have changed, or maybe they were just younger back then. But let's talk more about this. Everything that I'm going to talk about is either a song that's been released or it's been documented and printed somewhere. This is stuff that's been out there for a while. I just compiled it together to talk about this topic. Now, in the 70s, Rolling Stones released a song called Brown Sugar. Now, if you read the lyrics to this song, they're pretty heavy. It's pretty much about a woman who is forced into slavery, put on a ship, brought to the States, and then sexually desired or raped by her master. In the 70s, maybe this was cool, or maybe this was kind of provocative and cool and they could talk about that. Obviously, this was geared towards a white audience. I wouldn't think that this was meant for anybody else. Nowadays, when this song is performed by the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger censors the lyrics. He does not sing it the way it was recorded, obviously because culture has changed quite a bit. So this is the only example I'm going to give from the 70s. I'm going to jump into the 80s because rock and metal was mostly big in this decade, and there are quite a few examples that I'm going to give. In 1983, Def Leppard did a show in El Paso. After that, they had a show in Tucson, Arizona, and during the song Rock of Ages, Joe Elliott was talking to the audience, trying to get them riled up, trying to get them louder, and he made a racial remark about Mexicans.
Due to a remark that Joe Elliott made in Tucson the day after the Def Leppard show here in El Paso. Well, as you know, he made a remark about greasy Mexicans. We did not like that. We have a Def Leppard boycott going on.
Now, this is way before the internet even existed. So radio stations started reporting on this, and radio stations in El Paso started boycotting the band and destroying their music. As a result, Joe Elliott called a radio station and tried to apologize shortly after this incident.
According to the Arizona Daily Star, a Tucson newspaper, you allegedly made a remark on stage while performing during Rock of Ages, referring to El Paso as, quote, that place with all the greasy Mexicans, end quote.
It was not meant as a racial or harmful statement in any way. It was basically just a bit of a wind-up to try and get the crowd more excited than they already were.
So why a remark about greasy Mexicans instead of just Mexican Americans?
And obviously that night I made a big mistake. It was unintentional and supposedly just, a bit of playful chit-chat with the audience. That was all it was supposed to be. And if I've offended anybody, then I'm very, very sorry about it.
So after this, Def Leppard was scheduled to play in El Paso again in 1988, but due to death threats, they canceled the show. And they didn't play there again up until 2000. So what I think is surprising about this incident is this was in the early 80s, and I think being politically correct was not that big of a thing back then, or it definitely was not what it is today, but this comment still traveled pretty far, and it's remarkable how the band was called out on it. The next example I'm going to give is pretty shocking. The band Anthrax. To be fair, it's not exactly the band Anthrax, but for a lot of people, it's the face of the band Anthrax. Scott Ian and Charlie Benante in the 80s were part of a band called Stormtroopers of Death, S.O.D. And they had an album titled Speak English or Die. This band was extremely fascist and the lyrics were extremely racist. So let's check out some of their music.
This song is called Speak English! Come on up! You come into our country, you can get real dumb. The most you go, you fucking bum. So they got the blood and born to tell I made with the street. Put their money to this money, what is the publicity thing? You always make a play. You are always gay. You can get through the gay. Come in here, speak English! You don't know what I want, you don't know what I need. Why must I repeat myself to your fucking read? Not something active, but they just feel like me. Was it not hard to end you against the time? You always there. He's the guy with the bomb strapped to his chest. This goes out to him, the song is called Fuck the Middle East.
What's surprising about this is, back to the incident with Phil Anselmo at Dime Bash 2016, Scott Ian was also one of the people who criticized Phil Anselmo, calling him racist. Scott Ian said his behavior was vile and told him to donate to a Jewish foundation if he truly was not a racist. However, the lyrics of Stormtroopers of Death songs are equally as horrendous as what Phil Anselmo did himself. So the next band is Slayer. The song Angel of Death is written from the perspective of someone who's enjoying torturing and killing people during the Holocaust.
Problems with a special song, Angel of Death.
Yeah, there's one song everybody seems to be making a big fuss over. But, you know, I think the record company, you know, we talked to a few of the representatives last night, and they were stating that, you know, they were still kind of leery about releasing record because they don't know what kind of slack they'll be getting. But I think it'll be all right.
So they changed their minds because it was to be heard that the song, because the subject is about the Nazi regime, about Dr. Mengele.
Yeah, it's Angel of Death. It's the name of the song. It's just basically a song. This is the gentleman that wrote the song, too.
Now, Slayer's vocalist, Tom Araya, is a minority himself. However, they used imagery that resembled Nazi imagery during the 80s. They were trying to get attention. They were trying to be the villains of metal. They were also using a lot of satanic stuff back then. But today, Tom Araya is a Christian and he talks about religion quite often. Next on the list is Guns N' Roses, the band that I talked about in the opening of this video. Now, the song One in a Million has some pretty horrible lyrics that I'm going to play for you right now.
Police and niggas, that's right, get out of my way. Immigrants and faggots, there makes no sense to me. We come to our country.
After the song came out, Axl started defending himself in interviews, and here's what he had to say.
But by shooting from the hip with lyrics that decry, quote, immigrants, niggers, and faggots in the GNR Lies track One in a Million, Axl got himself in hot water and got his band dumped from an AIDS benefit concert earlier this year.
There's a lot of different meanings to that word, but a lot of people just take the time to assume that when a white person uses the word nigger, it's meant at the whole black race and you're derogatory and you're a racist. I don't think people took the time to listen to the third verse and figure that one out because it says radicals and racists don't point your finger at me, you know?
Now, one thing that I noticed, and you will also notice this as you watch this video, that back in the day when someone did something racist and afterwards they said, hey, but I'm not a racist, don't call me a racist, I guess back then that was enough to get you off the hook. That doesn't quite work today, saying something racist and then saying, but I'm not a racist. Anyway, so the next band, Motley Crue, has a few examples of being racist. One of them is from their guitarist, Mick Mars, during this video.
Look at it, though. Looks like some goddamn nigger painting right here.
Now, it looks like he was trying to be funny there. And once again, back then, this music was probably targeted towards a white audience, so he probably thought, this is not a big deal if I talk like this. And here's another incident, and this one was with Nikki Sixx at a concert.
You're a big fucking black man. You feel pretty good beating up a little girl. Fuck you. Fucking kick his ass. How's that feel, you asshole, you fucking nigger?
So this incident was more recent than the incident with Mick Mars. Now, once again, in this video, Nikki Sixx says, I'm not racist, don't call me a racist, or something on those lines.
Don't call me a fucking racist, man, because then you are a fucking nigger, because no one treats another human being like that. Suck my...
I don't know if that's a good defense after stooping so low and calling somebody something negative and derogatory that addresses their race, but then you go and say, but I'm not racist. All right, so the next band, I'm sure a lot of you metalheads saw this coming, is Pantera. Now, before I even talk about the Dime Bash incident that happened a few years ago, let's go all the way back to the 90s when Pantera was breaking through and becoming this mainstream metal success. Now, I didn't live in the States back then, and I saw this bald-headed vocalist who was headbanging. I thought he looked super cool, he was aggressive. However, if you lived in the States back then and you were a minority and you were part of this culture, and you see the imagery of Pantera with Confederate flags, and you see this bald vocalist with tattoos, he's this tough guy, you would probably get the impression that this band is not targeted towards you. Now, that's not to say that anyone who's bald is racist or a skinhead. However, the topic of racism came up time and time again with this band, and here's some footage talking about this in the 90s.
Ever since the thrash rant band Pantera topped the charts with its new album Far Beyond Driven, there's been media mumbling about the alleged racism of the group's lyrics. A quick check of the lyric sheet reveals nothing beyond the usual apocalyptic hardcore spew, although such phrases as building a blood and kill them all may strike some non-fans as vaguely unsettling. We spoke to Pantera about all this recently, and in our interview with frontman Phil Anselmo, you'll notice he's wearing a t-shirt bearing the Triskelion, a circle of 3 interlocked 7s that's well known as a white supremacist symbol in South Africa. Here's the story.
I have friends of every color and every creed, and they ask come in every color. And that's how I believe, and that's you're only a fool if you don't.
Well then, some fools seem to have found their way to Pantera.
White power! Kids that come to our shows and whatever yell white power, well, all I got to say about that is I ain't them kids, and them kids are going to yell what they're going to yell anyway.
Asked if she knew the meaning of that t-shirt symbol Anselmo was wearing, a Pantera publicist said clothes are not the issue.
And here is some footage from around the same time and from a few years after this footage was taken from this news report where Phil Anselmo is talking about white pride and white power.
I was told earlier that the racism problem here ain't all that big a problem. Blacks and whites are in basic harmony. Well, where we live, you see blacks and you see whites. It ain't really working out too good. And the big trend in America and across the world is for the fucking black rap bands to come out and they write these songs that sounded exactly fucking alike, song after fucking song, and they down white people. They dog out white people. Can you understand what I'm saying? You know what the fuck I'm talking about? Well, over here they may teach you to be sympathizers and shit like that. Well, let me tell you what. This is one white kid on behalf of the rest of my friends up here. Look, we ain't putting up with that fucking bullshit no more. No. There ain't one other fucking white band in America or anywhere else that's got the fucking guts on our level to come out and say, fuck all that black power bullshit. That's what I gotta say right now. But I tell you what, it needs to be said, and there ain't no other motherfucking band, especially a heavy metal band, that's got the guts to say it. So you listen to me real quick. You listen to me. The big motherfucking trend now, the big trend in the whole goddamn fucking, the MTV and all that goddamn, the radio and shit, is the thing that's been a trend for a while, but it's getting more boisterous and more loud and clear, is a thing called, it's the black rap band. It's the rap thing that's bothering me. You feel the same way, don't you? You're getting fucking tired of this shit, ain't you? I got friends of mine who rent out these PA systems and they rent out equipment, and they're not prejudiced. They're not prejudiced at all. And I'm gonna say on that very token, as far as Pantera is concerned, we got friends of every color and every kind. And you remember what I said? You ain't gotta cheer, you ain't gotta cheer. This ain't a Skid Row show. Just listen to me, listen to me. Listen to me. We got friends of every color and every kind. Do you understand that? You understand what I'm saying? If you conduct yourself a gentleman and as a human being, then you treat it that way. But when it comes down to when my friends come back and tell me that these black-ass rap motherfucking bands are on stage saying, down whitey, the white man is the oppressor, the white man is evil, white this, bad, white that, and shit like this. Look, let me say something, motherfucker. I'm born a honky, 100% motherfucking white. You understand me? I was born in 1968. I'm not responsible for motherfucking jack shit that happened and nobody else is. Nobody else is. And every other motherfucking color and race has every reason in the world to have pride. Black power. Black pride. Hispanic pride. All these things. But if you say white pride, what are you? A racist. If you say white pride, you're a racist. But look, let me say what. I'm gonna put 1 foot motherfucking forward right now. And I'm gonna say straight up, hey, if you got white pride, baby, fucking there you go. Have white pride. Shit. And listen, the rap bands, the majority of them, the hardcore motherfuckers, are pissing all over you white culture. They don't fucking want your fucking culture at all. They fucking dog out every white person that was ever born, and they don't know any of us. Do you understand that? In the United States where we live, the black people walk around with t-shirts and shit that say it's a black day. You wouldn't understand. And my favorite one of all is stop black on black crime. You know what that means? That means stop black people from killing each other. What does that say to you? That means it's okay to kill white people, doesn't it? That's what it means to me. It don't say stop fucking crime. It says stop black on black crime. It's okay to kill a white motherfucker, no problem. Well look, let me tell you what. Let me tell you what. If you walked around with a fucking t-shirt on that said white pride, you would be racist. You would be a piece of shit motherfucking racist, and you couldn't deal with it. From here on this point on, all you white kids out there, let me tell you something that no other motherfucking band, white band in the world has any guts to say. Let me say it right now. When you wake up in the motherfucking morning and you look at yourself in the goddamn mirror, look, hey, have all the fucking pride in your heart, man. Have all the fucking pride in the world, man. That's what I want to say. Because we are the great people. Hey, and you know what? Maybe, just maybe, tonight is a white day, and the black will not understand what the fuck I'm talking about. Does that make sense to you? I'm sure your country doesn't have near the problems we have about it, but look, open your eyes. Open your eyes. It's fucking reverse discrimination is what it is. Because I ain't no goddamn sympathizer, because you know why? Every motherfucking black ass rap group motherfucking downs whitey every show. And you know what? I have had it. I'm sick of it. If they could go out on stage and dog us out, believe me, I'm not going to stoop to any level. All I want to say to each and every person in this whole motherfucking place, no matter what your goddamn color is, use your own motherfucking mind for a change. And number two, wait up, don't start cheering after everything I say. This ain't a Skid Row concert, this is a fucking Pantera fucking show, man. I want to say when you wake up in the motherfucking morning, you look at your fucking face. And you look at where you came from and just show pride. You show your pride. And I will tell you what, these days, fucking crowd. That's all I gotta say, baby. That's all I gotta say.
So fast forward a few years later, Pantera becomes this iconic metal band. And then you start hearing things such as Phil Anselmo saying white power and doing Nazi salutes during the shows. I'd seen some of this footage years ago, and it seemed as people didn't really care a whole lot. They sort of brushed it off, and I would see a lot of comments and videos where people would say, yeah, I went to a show and he does that, that's kind of his thing. And then we go to the more recent event that happened at Dime Bash.
Yo, Dime Bash, thanks for coming out tonight, Lucky Strike Live. It's been a pleasure having all of you here and all the awesome musicians. Ronnie James Dio, Stand Up and Shout, Cancer Foundation. Thank you very much for coming out, guys. Dime Bash 2016.
Now, after this video circulated, he said that he was joking about white wine. However, Rob Flynn from Machine Head made a video and said that that was not the case.
I was there. And I can tell you for a fact that there was not a Chardonnay or a Pinot Grigio in sight backstage.
Now, something very important that Rob Flynn talks about in his video is the systematic or the institutional racism towards African American people. He doesn't put it in those terms, but he talks about when he purchased his second home, how in the agreement he saw that African American people were not allowed to buy a house in that area back in the day. So in some of the earlier videos that I showed you, you saw Phil Anselmo is talking about having white pride. He's saying what's wrong with having white power. Then he says F black power. He also says that black rap music puts the white person down, and he takes an issue with people saying stop black on black crime. But what he doesn't seem to understand, at least in these videos, is the systematic and institutional racism that African American people have had to deal with for decades. From healthcare, or being denied healthcare, being denied housing, denied employment, denied voting rights. And then there's this crack epidemic that a lot of people feel was targeted towards African American people. They have been part of a society that has really held them down. So when someone is saying stop black on black crime or black power, it's not the same thing as saying, okay, white power or white pride. Obviously, when you start saying stuff like that, which Phil Anselmo was saying in some of his shows, it can come across as prejudice or downright racist. And I will leave it at that. Now, if I missed anything, or if you'd like to share something else, please do so in the comments section below. If you disagree with me, you can let me know why. Now, this is a pretty heavy topic, and I know this is not a comfortable subject, but I do think that we are the ones who made these bands as successful as they are by being their fans. We purchased their albums, we went to their shows, we consume the stuff that they put out there. And I think it's important to talk about this, especially if you're someone who has felt that this band sort of alienated me when they did this thing or that thing. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. I will catch you boys and girls next time. Take care.